أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على أشرف المرسلين سيدنا ونبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. أما بعد، فأعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قال الله تبارك وتعالى في كتابه الكريم بعد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. هن لباس لكم وأنتم لباس لهن. صدق الله العظيم. قال النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم: يا معشر الشباب من استطاع منكم الباء فليتزوج، أو كما قال عليه الصلاة والسلام. Brothers and sisters in Islam, respected elders, those who are listening online, firstly, we thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for bringing us here together for the Salat al-Maghrib. As we know, the days are getting longer, so the Salat al-Maghrib is coming, obviously becoming later and later. So inshallah, it's really a blessing when you pray the Salat al-Maghrib or Salat al-Isha in Jama'ah. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept it from us, and may He allow us to be from those who are called from the prostrators, from the doers of good, from the doers of the Salat on the Day of Judgment. Ameen. Before we proceed to week 2 of our fiqh al-marriage, just a quick reminder regarding something which happened last week. There was a day which happens every year. It's been going on for a while now, and they call it International Women's Day. International Women's Day. And I thought I'd just give a quick 5-10 minutes reminder regarding this, and then we will move on to today's topic, which is the issue of when to get married. When does the Sharia, when does the Quran, where does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tell us, or the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam instructs us to get married? What are the conditions for marriage? Last week, alhamdulillah, we covered many of the issues regarding when it is prescribed, when it is obligatory, when it is sunnah, when it is mustahab, when it is disliked or makruh or haram to get married. So these topics have been covered last week. But today, inshallah, we'll cover the issues of when to get married, what is the right age, the issue of free time, occupation, why did some scholars in the past not get married, what was their reason, and really we should also, whether studying university, GCSEs, A-levels, are these a hindrance to get married? And also we'll touch upon the issue of social media, because social media, it is really a big part of our lives. Whether you like it or not, it is here, and we must be using it in the right way. When the TV arrived, many years ago, the scholars were debating that is it halal, is it haram, how do we use it? So the same thing is the issue of social media. How do we use it, if we are going to use it, and how do we protect ourselves and our children from it as well, especially in the case of marriage, proposing, etc. So going back to International Women's Day, we all know, alhamdulillah, we are Muslims by the grace of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The rights of women, or for the women, were given by the Quran, by the legislator, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, many hundreds and thousands of years ago. 1,440 years ago, the Sharia came in order to complete and to rectify some of the ills of the societies. And one of the ills of the society was the mistreatment of daughters, of wives, of even mothers were disrespected in those days. And we all know the tradition, the culture of burying their daughters alive. This was something which was common before the advent, before the coming of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and the Quran. So the Quran made it clear that it is not allowed to kill any of your offsprings out of fear of hunger, or out of fear of not being able to provide for them, out of fear that we're living in tough times, we cannot have children. This is something which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has told us categorically in the Quran. Many ayahs relate to this. Don't kill your offspring. وَلَا تَقْتُلُوا أَوْلَادَكُمْ خَشْيَةَ إِمْلَاقٍ نَحْنُ نَرْزُقُهُمْ وَإِيَّاكُمْ. We are to provide to them. Who are you to decide that you are going to have children, not going to have children? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the provider for these things. So the daughters was the first thing which we know the Sharia came to give them protection. So alhamdulillah. With regards to slaves and women, again the same issue was present. They were mistreated. And the Quran and the Hadith and the Sharia came to regulate this trade of slavery. Yeah, the slave trade. And the same thing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran, I mentioned this yesterday in the short bayan, that no book will have a full chapter named after women, An-Nisa. The Bible, the Torah, I don't know if anybody is aware of the Bible, of the Torah. Do they have a chapter called the women? I don't think they do. Yeah. So this really gives you the importance, and it shows you the importance of the women. And before the departure of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he mentions that be careful of your salat, take care of your salat, and also what your right hand possesses. That could mean your slave. That could also mean what you have authority over, what you are liable for, i.e. your children, your wife, etc. So alhamdulillah, when we look at the history, we shouldn't be ashamed. We shouldn't be ashamed, and we should actually be preaching it out there that Islam came and it gave its full rights to all the vulnerable people in the society. Now I mentioned an incident which I was reading a few days ago, that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was with his companions one day, and a slave girl who was insane came to him. I don't know if anybody's heard of this narration. It is narrated in Muslim. Has anyone heard of this hadith? Anyone? No. It is a beautiful hadith, and I'll try to summarize. It's a long hadith. A slave, woman, girl, and she was insane. So remember these three weaknesses in a human being. So she comes to the Prophet ﷺ and she says to him, "O Muhammad, I want to take you somewhere. I want to speak to you." So you imagine if that was our case, we were in the masjid and someone from outside who was insane, who was tested by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who happened to be a slave and happened to be also a girl or a woman, what would we do? Most likely we would tell them to leave, go out, don't disturb us, don't disturb me, etc. So the Prophet ﷺ said no. He said to her, "What do you want?" She said, "I want to take you somewhere." So he said, "Okay." So he gave her his hand, ﷺ, and she took him by his hand around Medina, around the streets of Medina, until she came to a small alleyway, and they decided that this is where we're going to sit. So they sat for many minutes, or half an hour, and then Prophet ﷺ asked her, "Have you finished? Was that enough?" She goes, "Yes." "Then you can go away." So this really teaches us many things. It teaches us that the vulnerable in the society, they must be looked after, whether we like it or not, whether it is in our interest or not, whether it benefits us or not. This is something which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has prescribed. He said that give the rights to those who must be given their rights. And this is referring to the women, the orphans, the yatim, the miskeen. And this story shows us, many things. But one of the things that we should be treating people of all, illnesses or all weakness, whatever weaknesses they might have, we should respect them. We should treat them as human beings. We should treat them as somebody who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is testing, and He might test one of us with the same thing. Insanity, there's no fixed formula that it will come to so and so person. It could happen to anyone. And she was born a slave. It wasn't her choice. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made it so. She was born a slave. And she was born a female. It wasn't her choice. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made it so. He decreed that she was going to be born a female. After this day, also prior to this incident, people used to look down on slaves, on those who were slightly insane or who were mentally ill, and especially the female slaves. They used to look at them in a really bad way. But this narration, this tradition showed the companions that we should respect them. And from that day onwards, alhamdulillah, this was the attitude towards this female slave. Also in the eyesight of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and His Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam, we know he was born an orphan. And there's a hikmah, there's a wisdom why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made him suffer in the early years, through the loss of his mother firstly, then his grandfather, and then his wife, and then his uncle at the same time. So this was something which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wanted to instill in him, that mental strength which he later demonstrated during his prophethood. This was something Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wanted to show the humankind, and many signs, and this was one of the many signs which he instilled in his Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam. If you look on the flip side, if you look in contrast to Islam, let's look at Judaism, Christianity, look at all the different religions, and then look at the Western society. When did they actually start giving the rights to women? If you look online, or if you look through the history books, you will see it wasn't long ago. Up to recently, they were debating in France whether the female is actually a body and a soul, or whether it is just a body you can use and abuse and throw away. Up to recently, up to a couple hundred years ago, they were debating this amongst the scholars, the universities. So you think that Islam came so many hundreds and thousands of years ago, but unfortunately we are unable to deliver this. We are unable to portray this the right image, because they want to pick on things which do not concern society. So they would rather pick on things which have no benefit for them or to Islam. So let's have this clear. Alhamdulillah, we should be firm on this by the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. What has happened with Islam? Now I'm going to talk about Islam. I'm not going to talk about the West or the Christianity or Judaism, because my knowledge of that is very, very little. Okay? So what has happened with the beautiful religion of Islam? Ibn Khaldun, he says in his Muqaddimah that each religion, each society, each culture has his ups and downs. And he says that the higher the up is, the greater the fall as well. So the Islam at one time was ruling India, ruling the Ottomaniya were ruling for hundreds of years. Then we must look at the decline as well. So the higher you go, obviously the lower you will also going to fall before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala changes his way. So this is something he mentions in his time. He was a great historian, Ibn Khaldun, rahimahullah ta'ala. So this is something which has crept into the deen of Islam, that we have, unfortunately, somehow or the other, the culture has mixed with the religion. So when you hear about things like, I just mentioned a few things, domestic violence. On domestic violence, we're going to have a separate talk on domestic violence. That is this what Islam says about domestic violence? What does Islam say about domestic violence? Domestic violence is obviously the physical abuse and also verbal abuse between the husband and the wife or any partners. So when we hear these issues regarding domestic violence, honor killings, these are things which are present within our society. Unfortunately, these have crept in. It's no fault of the religion. Don't blame the religion. If we have introduced these false notions into our religion, then we are to blame, not the religion. Obviously to do with issues relating to physical and mental abuse. Physical, mental abuse. These are both things which Islam forbids completely. And moving on to that, we have the issue of treating women with no respect. Whether they are women who are Muslim or non-Muslim. We have no right to treat the non-Muslim female as our concubines or our milk yamin. This is nothing to do with Islam. And this is where the issue of grooming the children, and grooming gangs, which we have heard about many years ago in this locality. These were not religious people. They never came to the masjid. If they did, then they have mixed up their ideas with culture. And unfortunately, this has happened. We hear about it amongst some circles, that they say that the blood or even the skin of the Ghayr Muslim is halal. This is the same ideology people like ISIS, Al-Qaeda, they would make halal the killing of non-Muslims at all circumstances. This is the idea that they came up with, which was completely alien to Islam, which was completely the opposite of what Islam taught you. If Islam tells you that in war circumstances there are certain things which you shouldn't do, i.e. killing of innocent people, killing of the elders, the children, of the women, so it should be of the same, or if not better, when in times of peace. So we have to be very careful when that line is passed. When we cannot differentiate between religion, which is the deen and the sharia, and the culture, the urf. We have to be very careful, brothers and sisters. I mentioned earlier the issue of culture. Now this has happened to all religions. Most religions, Judaism, Christianity, have suffered with this issue. And Islam is also prone to these issues. We have to be very, very careful. What should we do? So what should be our response regarding these special days, women days, father days, mother days? We should be really clear in what we believe, and we shouldn't try to hide behind anything. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, has honored the woman through many forms, as the mother, as the grandmother, as the wife, as the sister, as the daughter, as the granddaughter, and in each role she has to be respected. Her rights have been given to her. Sometimes, you read the facts about inheritance, and this doubt arises in your mind that how come the man he gets 2 shares and the woman gets 1 share. What you shouldn't forget is that the man has to look after the woman as well, whereas she doesn't have to give anything from her share. He has to look after his sisters. If he has sisters in the family, he has to pay for the maintenance of them. Rather, they don't have to pay anything. And also, they will get a share from their husband as well. So we have to be very, very precise and very, very accurate in our analysis of these facts, especially fiqh facts, because they can get a bit cloudy sometimes. We should always thank our mothers, grandmothers. Also, don't be scared to thank your wife. Sometimes we as men, we become a bit, arrogant. We think, no, we shouldn't thank our wives. Who are they to be thanked? They should thank us. They use this hadith of the Prophet ﷺ that if I was to order someone to do sujood or to do ruku, I would order the woman to do ruku to her husband. There's a problem with this hadith, so don't take it as literal. But again, we shouldn't be scared to, it's not going to affect our pride. It's in the house between the husband and the wife. The children are there. Humble yourself. And for the sake of Allah, say, even if you are right, say sorry to her. Say, sorry, I made a mistake. I came home late. I went out with my friends to eat. These are all things which will upset the wives. So she has a right upon you, and you have a right upon her. So it works both ways. When we do the nikah, the groom is sitting there and he expects us just to reiterate that yes, she has right. You have right upon her. We tell her no, it's both ways. It's not just one-way traffic. It's a motorway. It's not a single. It's not a one-way system. There's traffic coming and there's traffic going, and there are traffic lights in between where you have to stop. You have to think. There's zebra crossings as well where you have to stop and think about your children. So you should imagine these things in your mind. This is why I'm preparing all this week. Next week is preparation for marriage, and this is part of the mental preparation. That don't think that the journey is going to be easy. Like, it's not going to be a walk in the park. If it was a walk in the park, then everyone would have got married and they would have lived happily ever after. A person came to Umar ibn al-Khattab radiallahu ta'ala once to complain about his wife, that she is very gobby, she talks a lot, she gives me an earache. So he comes outside the house, I forgot the name of the Sahabi, and he stops and he's hearing voices from the other side of the house. A woman, Atiqa, the wife of Umar ibn al-Khattab radiallahu, who he tried to stop from coming to the masjid, which he did and he couldn't, because the hukum from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was not to prevent or to stop the women of Islam to come to the masjid. You're not allowed to stop them. You will hear in some fiqh books that it is better for them to pray in the house, in one corner where nobody sees them, and when there's a curtain around them. So you tell them this hadith. So where did this hadith come then? They say, no, this was at the time of the Sahaba, there was no fitna. There was fitna. Sahabas got killed. Wasn't this a fitna? Umar ibn Khattab was killed in Salat al-Fajr and his wife was present. Isn't that a danger in itself? Yet he didn't stop her from praying in the back. So anyway, going back to the story, so he comes to the house of Umar ibn Khattab radiallahu ta'ala to complain that, please say some words of wisdom to my wife. Like people come to us, please talk to my wife. Who are we to talk to your wife? You talk to her yourself. Explain to her with wisdom. So he went, he stands behind the wall, he could hear loud voices. And Umar ibn Khattab is quiet, he's just listening, to his wife repeating. So he goes, if he's having such a bad time, who am I? He's Amir al-Mu'mineen, he could just lock her up into a closet and say, sit there. Well, he didn't. Rather, he was listening to her, and subhanAllah, he was walking away, and Umar ibn Khattab came behind him. He goes, oh, so-and-so come, you were waiting here, what is it? He goes, if you are suffering with the same issue, why should I complain to you? He was saying, no. He said, listen, he goes, they are, your responsibility They are someone who you must treat with kindness. They are delicate. Don't, when they are talking, when they are, unfolding, when they are unleashing that anger or that sort of, emotion, listen to it. Don't respond back. He said, he had, mashallah, Atiqa, he had other wives. He said, we love our wives, we respect them. Shouldn't you be thankful for one thing? That they are bearing your child, for instance. They are looking after you. Come home, they wash your clothes, they prepare your food. And the least you could do is just listen to them, because that's what they want. They want you to sit down and they want you to listen to them. So number one, this is a tip that when you are, going to get married, inshallah, keep this in your mind that this is going to happen. You are going to come to this situation where you'll be sitting and you'll want to respond, but it's best not to respond. Just think about Amir al-Mu'mineen radiyallahu ta'ala, was one of those who were promised Jannah. He was a strong leader. It is said that when he is walking on one side, the shaitan runs away from him. He doesn't want to stay on the same path as Umar. So if Umar is like this in front of his wife, who are me and you? We are nothing. We have no iman compared to him. These were the Sahaba. These were the leaders of our Ummah. Moving on to the topic today, inshallah. Just a final, one of the quotes by the Salaf Salih, that the woman's strength should be celebrated and she should be supported at all times. We shouldn't neglect them. When you start neglecting your elders, your youngsters, those who are weak in society, then you have problems. The issue of single parents, even though the state is providing for them, even though they are monetarily, they are well off, there is still a problem there. Massive problem. You see the youngsters growing up 15, 20 years, they have no discipline, there's no control over them. We have a big issue at this time, even amongst the Muslim community, of knife crime. There was in Birmingham a few weeks ago, there was a couple of major 2-3 killings in a couple of days. It's madness. Children, what makes the child of 15, 16, 17, to carry a knife? He must be insecure. He must be scared of the drug dealers outside. There must be something wrong in the society, in the family, for him to have to carry a knife. This is not natural, this is not normal. This is a major mental health issue there. Major. One of them was actually, he used to come to the masjid. He was innocent, he was stabbed. He was innocent. The one who used to come to the masjid, a young boy, he was actually studying Arabic in the mosque, the local mosque. He was stabbed. May Allah bless his soul and grant him the darajah of shaheed in the hereafter. He was a young man who had a lot to look forward to. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wanted to give him that darajah, that he was killed without any reason. He was killed unjustly as an innocent soul. So Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, in his farewell Hajj and in his illness, mentioned the rights of women and those who are weak in the society. Moving on, brothers and sisters in Islam. So today, it's an easy question to answer, when to get married. Because the Prophet ﷺ has answered it in the hadith. مَنِ اسْتَطَاعَ مِنْكُمْ وَالْبَاءَ. Ba'a is when you are able to physically, emotionally, mentally get married, then you should get married. From the age of puberty up to your death. As long as you are physically able to get married. I mean, last week we covered the issues of when you shouldn't get married. Now you shouldn't get married if you have no desires, if you have no shahwa. Some people in society might be like that. You don't encourage them to get married. Or if you have any illness which will affect the later generation, you shouldn't get married. I.e. AIDS. AIDS is a major issue. So if you know someone has AIDS, you must tell them this, that you're not allowed to get married. Yeah, there might be other ways of going around this, but this is something which is in the books. Physically, mentally, and financially. So you ask, what will be the age of puberty? Now, the physical age varies from country to country. Yeah, it is proven in science that the colder climates, the child becomes of age later on. But when it's a hot climate, like in Asia, Africa, the children usually become of age much earlier. But we have another issue here as well. When a child is from blasted, if he has many distractions around him at an early age, if he is bombarded with pictures of nudity, etc., this will also hasten the age of puberty. Because from the age of 4, 5, 6, you have introduced this notion. Don't forget their brains are still innocent. So they still, whatever you feed them from that age, naturally they will grasp it. And they will start asking you questions about it. So you have to keep that in mind. That physically, mentally is another thing. They might vary in different societies. We know back in Arabia, in Africa, in Asia, our grandparents, our great-great-grandparents used to get married quite, in the early 20s, even before that, in the late 10, 15. After 15, 16, they used to say you're ready to get married. And also financially is another thing, that how much financially secure you must be able to get married. Now the major thing that the ulama, the fuqaha, they mentioned is you must have somewhere to cover your head, i.e. somewhere to stay, so a place to live. And again, this goes the privacy, which Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam also had his own hujra, and he showed his nation, his ummah, that you must have this privacy in your house. You have a right to have privacy in your own house with your wife and your children, etc. So second is very, very important. You should be able to earn a lawful earning. You should pay the dowry, which is not in the thousands, if not even the hundreds. The dowry is something small which you should give. And dowry is part of the nikah as well, mahar. What about when you come to the other issues regarding, fine, I'm okay physically, there's nothing wrong with me. Mentally, I'm sane. Financially, I'm okay, but if you say that I have no time, I have no free time, what do you do? So what do the scholars, they say? If you have enough time to give to your family in the whole 24 hours to provide for them, then you mustn't use this excuse, because we see it that when we want to make time, it's easy. But we use this a lot that, I'm studying, etc. I'm doing my A-levels, GCSEs, universities. These are all issues regarding time. But you ask the children the same question, how much time do you have to chat on the phones with your friends of the opposite sex? Which is a problem. Girlfriend and boyfriend. They'll have the whole night to spend chatting. Even if they have exams in the morning, they will still be able to take some time out. So this time issue has to be looked at very, very carefully. Communicating with غير mahram in Islam has always been there, but it has become more of an issue now with social media, WhatsApp, so we can easily hide behind the keyboards, so we can pretend to be someone else. We even have issues now where there are husbands giving talaq over the phone, over the Skype, over the WhatsApp. And not all ulama agree with this. They say no, it has to be done in person. It has to be done in person. And again, we have the issue that how much of a limit would you place on your youngsters before they travel away to university? Some parents, they try to do something else. So they'll do the nikah before they go to university, and they'll tell the child that this is your wife, we've done the nikah, you are halal, but we do the walima later on. We have an example of this in the seerah of Rasulullah. Does anyone remember this example? It wasn't the same situation, but there has been a case where Rasulullah did something similar. Does anyone remember? Hazrat Aisha radiallahu ta'ala, she was, when did Prophet marry her? What age was she? The nikah was done at the age of? Anyone? You want to say? Six. So the nikah was done at the age of 6. But then the marriage was consummated later on at the age of 9, after the battle of Badr. So this is the ruling that some ulama, they allow it. That if you propose to someone and she accepts or he accepts, then you are married, but you can delay the feast, the walima, till you actually consummate the marriage, till you actually get together as a husband and wife, and the relationship of a husband and wife takes place. So that is the walima. So the walima has no effect on the nikah. You can do that any time. The danger here is that the boy and the girl, they're thinking in their mind that they are married. So they're married, they're halal. So you're telling them to wait 2, 3, 4 years down the line to control yourself. They're talking, texting on the phone. God forbid, Allah forbid, something goes wrong, either physically or texting wise, they end up in an argument. What do you do? So there's always danger that the shaitan, he will creep in. They're allowed to text because they are husband and wife. Yeah, the nikah is done. They're allowed to meet one another. Yeah, so there's no issue there. But what you are doing, you are really, you're treading on eggshells. Something, we know our youngsters nowadays, how impatient they are. How impatient they have become, even with their own parents. So I would recommend really, this is just the advice that some scholars, they say, is not if you are going to do the nikah and you're going to, delay the walima, it's best to do everything beforehand and to get it out of the way, not to delay it too much. Especially in the situation, the climate which we are living in nowadays, it's more of a risk. Now, how many times have you heard that a rishta has been agreed and then later on it gets dissolved because something has happened, they can't agree upon, I don't know, where we're going to have the walima, how much we're going to spend. This can happen between the families. So before this, it gets to it's better to ease and facilitate the act of marriage, because they have, people do it for different reasons. We'll get to that later on. Why do people do that? It's different reason. But really, if you want to do it on a Shari perspective, then we must let the youngsters get married as soon as they can. This is my advice, and I'm not saying to get them married at the age of 10, 12. No, I'm not saying this. I'm saying whenever it is on the first instance, do it. But don't delay it for 10, 15 years later when it might be too late. It might be too late. So you have to be very, very careful with regards to this. Living in the UK, there's a limit that when a boy and a girl can legally have that relationship. What's the age here? Sorry? 17. Is it 17? Or 16? Or 18? 16. Someone saying 21. There is an age limit. But let me tell you one thing. There's an age limit of that act. Okay? If it happens between the boy and the girl, the boy will be he'll be punished. Yeah, he can actually go to a young offenders institution. Okay? We have seen many cases here of underage pregnancies at the age of 12, 13, etc. So we have to be very, very careful. Every country has its rules and regulation. Yeah, Islam has its rule and regulation. But Islam tells us that we must abide to the overall rule of the land, as they say. Yeah, rule of the land. So we have to be very, very careful in that. So the minimum age in some countries, I think in the US, is it more or less in the US?
It depends on the state.
It depends on the state. So even in the US, they have different ages. Some countries will have less, some will have more. So you have to take this into consideration. Yeah, this is something we must do as responsible Muslims and adults. Moving on, so to delve into the issue of social media and its effect, we'll leave that for another day. But texting as a whole is a problem. I'm having a lot of complaints from the youngsters. Obviously this is something you don't want to tell the parents. Youngsters of the age, say about 17, 18, 19, 20, even above 20, they have become addicted to what? Pornography. That is telling you that these kids are ready for marriage physically. Maybe they haven't got a job, that's a different issue. Now these children or youngsters or teens, whatever you want to call them, if they cannot fast to keep the desires low, what do? We are really destroying a whole generation of youngsters, of shab, who are really the pillar, one of the pillars of the society. Late marriages also will result, you will have children later on, grandchildren later on, so everything has been delayed. So pornography is a main, big issue. Ask the kids out there, they will tell you. you know, if they're a bit shy, they won't open up to you. But I have many, unfortunately, youngsters who have said we cannot move away from pornography. And it's not just the boys, it's also the girls. Don't just think it's a male issue, it's a female issue as well. So we have to be very, very careful on this. So all this stems from the exposure to nudity, not lowering our gazes, not protecting ourselves, being afraid of the opposite sex. There are some youngsters who are so scared, even talking, to the opposite sex. When they've grown to a certain age, because they've never had this open dialogue, it's difficult for them. You don't blame them. So we have to be very, very careful on this part.
Can I just say something?
Yes, Haji said. We need to finish. We've got a few minutes here.
One problem I've come across, well, not me personally, but I've noticed in our community is when your children are growing up, and before they're hitting the age of puberty, their parents don't speak to them about it.
Yeah.
I think that's a problem as well. If you've got a son who's like 12, 13, I know he's only young, but obviously, even a female, really changes to your body when you went through puberty.
Yeah.
It does help if you actually sit them down and speak to them about it as a parent. The man can speak to his son, and the mother can speak to the daughter, so they know what's actually going to happen around the corner, with their bodies and stuff.
You said 12, didn't you?
Whatever age it is, whatever age. Obviously, in our time it was different, Obviously it's changed now. But it does actually help, if your parents actually prepare their children for what's coming around the corner, the physical changes that they go through.
Yeah.
But then, sometimes when it happens, the children don't even know what's going on.
This is why one of the reasons the government this is what they're saying, that they're going to introduce RSE, because the parents are not talking to their children, whether they are Muslim parents or non-Muslim parents. Yes, it is a fard, it is obligatory upon the parents that if you are going to have children, you must have that open dialogue with them. The Prophet ﷺ said there's no haya in learning about the fiqh, the halal and the haram, about how we should make wudu. So this should be, an openness should be there. What's happened, the openness is not there, because what I mentioned earlier is the culture. Some of the culture which we have inherited from our forefathers, our grandfather, is still there. Look at our weddings. How much of the weddings is Islamic? 5%. Even the nikah ceremony, they want you to go into the halls and do the ceremony there. So I've come up with a solution. I said, no, we're not going to do any nikahs in the halls. Come to the masjid. If you want the blessings, come to the masjid. Because the example I give to them is, say if you want to do a contract, say a commercial contract. I say, will you go down to Costa Coffee or to Starbucks and do the contract there? They laugh at me. I say, well, this is the same thing. You are doing the contract for your whole life, and you want the Maulvi Sahib to come to the hall. I've been to a few of these nikah ceremonies in halls. Astaghfirullah. We don't agree with it. It's really something which is a problem, because they are there to enjoy themselves for the walima or for the rukhsati. They don't want to listen to the Maulvi Sahib talking about nikah min sunnati, what is your haq. No, they know all this. So again, going back to the origin. So what is the origin of Islam versus what is culture? And a lot of the issues which we are facing is culture. So how we rid this pure religion, because Allah has told us that once you start to mix the culture with the religion, I will lead you astray, you will go astray. And you will become like animals or even worse. And what that is reference is how we act as humans being between man and woman and man, etc. So it's a very, very important point, that have this open dialogue with your children. We finish off on one part here. There are different types of fatwas which are going around for the youngsters, that if you can't get married, then you can have a temporary contract, i.e. girlfriend-boyfriend. Girlfriend-boyfriend relationships are destroying this ummah. We see marriages that are not lasting even a year, 6 months. Even those who get married later on, 30, 35, this is late. This is late to get married. Even those marriages are not lasting. Why? Because they still have in their psychology, they're thinking about when they were 18, 19, 17. and their expectations are still high up there. They don't realize that they're not a spring chicken anymore. They're grown, they're 30, 35. So this is a big danger. I really warn all of the parents against this. If you are in fear that your children will fall into this, do the right thing. Do the nikah for them. Whether it is a girl or a boy, if they love one another for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, not just temporary romantic love which disappears with the night and the day. No, if it's proper, they like one another, they want to be with one another. Again, I mentioned the issue of forced marriages. There's no forced marriages in Islam. There is something which is called, you can arrange a bride or a groom for your children. This is fine. If they agree, alhamdulillah. If they don't agree, don't force them. There's actually an act in this country, forced marriage act. They could actually throw you into prison for that. So you have to be very, very, you have to be intelligent. You have to be intelligent in deen and also in dunya. So girlfriend, boyfriend is something we have to be very, very careful. And I think the discussion must start at an age 9, 10 for the boys and similar for the girls. This is because they are introducing RSE for primary school children. And as I mentioned on this topic, you are allowed to withdraw them from schools. We're talking about this today in another gathering, that why the Muslims, have left it so late. Because unfortunately,
not from 2020 they won't.
So you have to.
From 2020 it's going to be compulsory.
So it's compulsory for the school that your child is in. You have to, but you can obviously take him away from that school. But again, you have to find another school for him. And most, if not all, the schools will have this as part of their curriculum. So keep that in mind, that how far you have to go with your child to educate him or her regarding these issues. Okay? So as long as the foundations in the house, in the family are strong, whatever they are being told in the schools, with the help of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, will have no effect on them. So again, it all boils down to how much tarbiyah and how much looking after we have in the house. I'll finish off on one of the points that is related to nikah al-sir, the marriage which is done in secret. Does the Sharia allow this? So we are talking about instances where girlfriend, boyfriend, they come to an Imam or a scholar or someone who can do the nikah for them, and that's it. They don't tell anyone. Is this allowed in Islam? And Shaykh al-Islam and also other scholars, they say that the nikah al-sir is similar to a nikah al-mut'ah. So something which you're doing just temporary without telling anyone, not even telling the parents. And this is something which should be avoided at all costs. If an Imam knows that the parents, for a genuine reason, don't know about the nikah, they should refrain from it and tell them that you need to make sure you get your parents. Even though the girl, she is allowed to get married without a wali. This is according to the Ahnaf, she can get married. But it's better, it is a more civilized way. I mean, if we carry on doing this practice, and anybody who just walks in, we do the nikah for, you might think we are, obviously keeping them away from sin, because we're making it halal for them. So what precedent this gives to the rest of them, that you can just come in, do the nikah, and it is halal, you have no commitment, there is no agreement, we don't know which way we are going or where we are coming back, inshallah. Just to move on, what is to come next week, inshallah, before we take the questions or any sort of comments. Week 3 and week 4, I think week 3 will be the last week on this topic. We will discuss issues of how to select a partner, what we should look in the partners, and inshallah also we'll look into that. What are the acts which are permissible before marriage? Because there is a bit of a confusion here. Are we allowed to speak even to the girl or to the boy? We'll go through all them, inshallah. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guide us to the straight path. May He allow us to be from those who act upon what we have said. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guide us to the sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. أقول قولي هذا أستغفر الله لي ولكم ولسائر المسلمين فاستغفروه إنه هو الغفور الرحيم.